Trials of a Royal Guard. By Ansel. Chapter 4. The Plan. In the span of a few days, Margol had changed from utter chaos into a city of somber quiet. Following our warnings, the army of Nordenver had marched south in preparation for renewed hostilities. That dramatically limited our time to provide the appropriate support our allies would need. Strangely enough, that wasn't currently dominating my thoughts. We'd deal with that. I still felt bad for putting Runic on the ship home. He'd looked so sad. At the end of the day, he just wanted to be with Val and I, but we sent him home. Lucky pony. I sighed and turned my attention to the Honor. She was resting daily on a berth just outside of the city. Technicians were inside, giving her a full overhaul. The Brigadier had decided that was worth the wait. I never expected to see her on the ground, a familiar voice said from over my shoulder. Russet, good to see you. What brings you this way? I replied with a smile after looking back. I'm just getting my new assignment. Russet was, without a doubt, an excellent officer. He'd made captain pretty quickly and had volunteered for service here just like I had. We'd worked together in Canterlot and in the Crystal Empire. In fact, it was partially because of me that we'd worked together at all. Shining Armor and I had picked him specifically from the academy. His gold armor was highly polished and really contrasted against the reddish coat and caramel mane that it protected. I also noticed his Royal Guard heraldry had been replaced with that of the Equestrian Army. His eyes followed mine to the badge and he shrugged. I doubt you're surprised. Not in the least. We're the same kind of pony. What's the assignment? Nothing too fancy. I'm the executive officer of an archery company. My ears flicked. No surprise there, either. You always were great with a crossbow. I'm sure you've shown those enlisted ponies a thing or two. He chuckled. You should see me with a bolt thrower. We never had the chance to play with those as guards. No kidding. Have you seen any pony else from back home? I imagine at this point Shining Armor's command is looking pretty bare. I hated to leave but, well, you know how it is. I do, believe me. For the most part, no. Just a few guards here or there through the processing center. I'm a little surprised to see that headquarters badge on you, though. I assumed you'd be in infantry or reconnaissance. If only he knew. If it had been up to me, I'd have been in the Royal Guard, securing some Griffin village. A year ago, he'd have been correct. I shrugged. It wasn't my choice, but I think I can make a difference there. They put me in operations. Oh, yeah, you were always good at that. Of course, I still think you were great at leading ponies, too. I guess we can't have both. At any rate, I need to get back. I just saw her here and recognized your armor. He offered a hoof. I took it and shook firmly. Good to see you, Russet. Take care of yourself, all right? You do the same. We'll meet back up in the Crystal Empire and have a drink when all of this is done. Consider it booked. He turned and headed off to wherever he was going. I did the same. It was almost time to meet up at the palace. We had a conference scheduled with the Nordenver military leadership and I dared not be late. Margol Palace was, in my opinion, not as nice as Canterlot Palace. It resembled an old castle more than anything and lacked the big beautiful stained glass windows or warmth of a home. That was one of the reasons, I suspect, why King Ranald spent so much time outside in his garden. Our meeting took place in the war room. It had once served as the great hall Princess Luna had been hosted in during our visit. Now it was full of Griffin and pony soldiers coordinating the war effort. Colonel Hammer caught sight of me once I'd come inside and he immediately came my way. What's the situation with the honor? Down for the count, sir. The technicians report that the retrofit will require more time than estimated. A week beyond the first, at least. Plus they want to do test runs once she is up and running. They say she'll be better than she ever was after that, though. He nodded. all right. There is nothing that can be done. We've already arranged for the Happiness to pick us up as a contingency. The Happiness, sir? Seriously? Beggars can't be choosers, Silent Night. She's the most recent ship, not that that says much. She's at least in good working order and can get us where we need to go. The Happiness was at least a quarter smaller than the Honor. It was also a show ship used to demonstrate military technology. How did the general take the news? He was amused. Come on, let's go sit in on the command session. That was an odd request. My advice had been required at a few of these briefings, but there would be nothing from me this time. Usually, captains didn't have a chair in this sort of thing. Me, sir? Yes, you. I want you to hear what the Griffins say so you can appropriately give your opinion after the fact. Just keep your mouth shut until we're back in our office. Clear? Yes, sir. Keeping my mouth shut was a specialty of mine. We walked to the back of the hall and entered through a set of double doors to the command suite. The sounds of soldiers preparing for a meeting flowed from the nearest conference room. Hammer and I went inside. He took a seat and I lingered near the wall. It wasn't long before General Ironhoof, Brigadier Gale, and several other senior staff came in and took their places. The Griffins had started filing in, too, including Field Marshal Skye, the leader of their military. All right, everyone, let's get this over with. I think we all know where we're at, but I want to cover it once again, Field Marshal Skye began. He nodded to General Ironhoof. Thanks to your report, we feel we were able to move fast enough to make the Sudramore forces at least pause. My guess is they were hoping they could just fly north and gobble up a lot of open ground. They have not yet begun to advance, though. They know they're in for a fight. He set several reports on the table and pushed them to the general. You'll see our latest intelligence there. Thank you. How is the disposition of your forces? All prepared? You've got a sizable army. I honestly didn't anticipate that many volunteers, General Ironhoof replied. Yes, well, we're a proud kingdom. Many Griffins answered the call immediately to serve their king and to turn back the aggression of our rivals, but, to round out the numbers, some were volunteered by the court. And, of course, we wanted highly experienced soldiers, too, so we brought in professionals. My ears shot up. Conscripts and sellswords? Surely he was kidding. Of course, the general replied tactfully. Though I imagine that isn't the bulk of your force. Not at all. Just enough to round out the numbers. If we could move on to the plan of attack. Yes. You still intend to launch a preemptive strike? Field Marshal Skye flourished his wings and said with authority, of course. This dishonor will not stand. They think they can invade our lands? We shall brush them aside before they can take another step. We will dislodge them and send them back on their shields. Colonel Hammer and I exchanged glances. I kept my face completely blank, but I was sweating on the inside. Rhindair was tough country. Especially that far south, and the Sudramore had been making efforts to fortify it. I understand. So the plan to allow them to advance has been scrapped? Just so we're clear. Scrapped and burned. Very well. How else can we assist in this endeavor? We would very much like it if you could bring several of your airships to the engagement. General Ironhoof shifted in his chair. My apologies, Field Marshal, but this is your war. We wouldn't be able to engage in combat. The Griffin waved a claw. Agreed, agreed. Nor do we need the assistance. We just feel as if the mere presence of a few of them lingering back behind our lines would instill fear in our enemies. Your ships would be at high altitude and further back. The general was silent for a minute before he stroked his hoof over his chin. All right, we'll discuss that internally and have an answer for you by the end of the day. Thank you. I should also mention this request comes from King Ranald himself. Much as your Princess Celestia believes, he believes your mere presence will deter the enemy. They may even abandon their positions. I understand. As I said, we'll answer you by the end of the day. Which, based on that, we should probably get to work. We'll need to arrange that if we agree. Unless you have anything else for us. Field Marshal Sky shook his head. No. As always, the Kingdom of Nordenver thanks you for your assistance. Good day. Everyone stood and the griffins left. General Ironhoof looked to the rest of us and motioned to the door. Every pony back to the headquarters. Not a word before then. The march from the palace was one of silence. Uncomfortable silence. Every soldier there was thinking the same thing, an assault on those fortifications would require an incredible expense of life. When we neared the headquarters building, Ambassador Freehoof came trotting towards us quickly. General. I'm so glad to see you. We have Ambassador, I'm afraid it will have to wait. We've got a situation and everything else is going to have to take a back seat. But, General, she started just as we reached her. She quickly turned and started trotting beside her, trying to keep up with the General's larger stride. Sir, this is important. The P.S., the status report for the crowns. I'll have to write them immediately, but a decision will need to be made before they can be informed. And no, sir. The P. General Ironhoof came to a stop outside of the headquarters and set a hoof lightly on the ambassador's shoulder. I understand your concern. Don't worry. He pushed the door open and came to a sudden stop. As did every pony else. Ambassador Freehoof stammered, I tried to tell you, sir. The princess is here. True to the mayor's word, Princess Luna was standing inside the headquarters. She had taken up position right in the middle of the main room and seemed to be studying our charts. She was surrounded by her house guard. Most of which I knew exceedingly well. Iridescence was there, of course, as well as Miley Hooves, Mountain Stone, and Dream Dancer. Then there was their new to me, commander. A mare I vaguely recognized since I had vetted her. Of course, I had no say in her selection and was slightly surprised she'd been chosen. Midnight Snow had seemed off to me, but her record was impressive. She had an extreme talent with magic and knew guard procedures perfectly. One of the things that stuck out in her file was that she resolved almost all conflicts peacefully. That is the kind of commander that Princess Luna needed at her side. Not one with blood on his hooves. Princess Luna, what a surprise to find you here, General Ironhoof said as he walked into the building. He politely bowed and smiled. A pleasant surprise on an unpleasant day. He then motioned to us. All right, ponies, come in and show your respect. The others and I slowly came in and bowed. Miley Hooves was twitching as she watched me. She was trying to fight a smile, but her left forehoof kept lifting in a little wave. I returned it with a subtle nod before moving to my desk. An unpleasant day, General? Am I to understand that your meeting with the Griffin Command was unproductive? You understand perfectly. They have disregarded our advice and wish for us to deploy our airships as a deterrent to their enemies during their attack. Deploy our airships? In support of their attack. The voice was strong, smooth, and unfamiliar. A tall, sturdily built unicorn stallion strode from one of the side offices. He had a coat like hematite that glimmered in the light. General, do the Nordenver not understand what advisors are? He asked before flicking his obsidian mane with the shake of his head. Forgive me, Princess, I spoke out of turn. Princess Luna bobbed her head in a nod. Not at all, Minister. You are here to provide your experience. General, please allow me to introduce you to Equestria's new Minister of Defense, Sombra. King Sombra? The unicorn ruler that disappeared and reappeared a while after his kingdom returned? Minister of Defense? General Ironhoof's brow raised. A pleasure, though my understanding was that you were the king of the crystal ponies. The hematite unicorn chuckled. 10 centuries or so again, certainly. Times have changed, though, and I have decided to live in the future instead of the past. The crowns, however, have seen fit to bestow me with responsibility. Princess Luna added, Princess Celestia and I felt a leader from a time where there was more strife might be a very valuable asset when it comes to dealing with this war. As such, we've named him our Minister of Defense. Of course, Princess. I see the wisdom in that. Well, sir, we were just going to start our discussion about the proposal. The short of it is that Nordenver wants us to bring our airships to their attack and keep them high and behind the line. Just enough to put some fear into their enemies. Minister Sombra idly stroked his chin. Well, to be perfectly frank, I don't know anything about the capabilities of airships or the enemy's ability to assault them. Would they be in much danger in this situation? Miley Hooves slowly inched her way towards my desk. Yes, I agree. What is the risk, General? Princess Luna asked. General Ironhoof looked over to Vice Colonel Penny. What does G2 think when it comes to Griffin capabilities in this regard? Intelligence has been spotty since they expelled all non-Griffins from Sudramore, she replied, but in the past their only real weapon against them was an attack by airborne soldiers. Their attempts to hit the honor with their bolt throwers was pretty feeble and we were a lot closer than I would guess you're thinking for this potential operation. Who made the request? Princess Luna asked. According to the Field Marshal, King Ranald himself. I believe he is still hoping to end this with minimal bloodshed. Minister Sombra stood tall. That should be our goal as well. If the risk is minimal, why deny our ally this request? Can we mitigate the danger further? Somehow Miley Hooves had crossed over half the distance between where she was and where I stood without any pony noticing. Brigadier Gale cleared his throat and looked to General Ironhoof. Once the general nodded, he went on, we could load them up with archers. Griffins in open skies flying at stable platforms loaded up with crossbows would be torn to shreds. That also doesn't even account for the thrower crews. Princess Luna and Minister Sombra exchanged a brief look. The minister then turned back to the general. What does your gut say? We're going to see one of the bloodiest battles I've ever had the displeasure of being associated with. There are a lot of unknowns. I'm leery but committed. If we follow Brigadier Gale's suggestion, I think the risk is tolerable. Princess Luna nodded. Then do so and exercise extreme caution. You are to retreat immediately if our ships are put at risk. Yes, Princess. We'll draft the plan immediately. Miley was now right next to me, vibrating with excitement. She kept trying to take my hoof in hers. I kept pushing hers back to where it should be. She kept trying. Now, Princess, if you and the minister would like, we could step into one of the conference rooms and I can provide you my detailed reports. Of course, General. Once the three of them were in the conference room and every pony else started to get to their jobs, Miley Hooves grabbed my hoof in her little brown one and squealed, Boss. Several of the ponies in our vicinity looked our way. I kept my expression blank and replied, Sergeant Hooves, wonderful to see you well and in such good spirits. How are you? She glared at me before smiling again. I'm well, sir. My stallion friend disappeared for a little while but then he showed up on a boat grumbling about being left. Sergeant, are you badgering the captain? Midnight Snow asked as she approached the two of us. Lieutenant Snow was a blue unicorn similar in color to my mane. Her mane, however, was a yellow and white swirl. No, ma'am, he loves me. Miley Hooves said loud enough for every pony to hear. There were some light chuckles. My face felt hot and I lightly swatted at her hoof. Sergeant. That isn't appropriate. It most certainly is not, Lieutenant Snow said. Though I understand you allowed your guards some latitude for morale purposes. I have not seen it fit to change that direction. First Sergeant Iridescence has been pleased by this. Still, Sergeant, you shouldn't be professing love for a married officer in the middle of a headquarters. Save it for later. She looked at my desk and added, might I ask what you're working on? Topographic maps of the Rhine-Air province. A place I suspect we'll be flying to soon. Indeed. That looks like most difficult terrain. Lucky you that you'll be in an airship. We arrived by boat. It seems we share a certain similarity in our inability to deal with the motion. Oh? Well. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied before there was another squeeze at my hoof. Miley hooves, cut it out. Maybe later we can catch up. She squeaked, I'm just so happy to see you. Plus you sent Runic home. He was here, right? I bet he was. He won't say. When I get back I'm going to put him in the corner. There were more chuckles around me. Colonel Hammer started over towards us. It was bound to happen, after all. Captain, I don't think you're going to be needed anymore tonight and it looks like the entire house guard is here. Perhaps you'd like to catch up with your former subordinates. Yes, sir, thank you, sir. I'll just be outside with, I looked at Lieutenant Snow. You can have most of them. I'm certain I can keep an eye on one princess. What a weird situation to find myself in. I headed toward the door. As I did so, the vast majority of the house guards followed suit, almost as if they were stalking me. Miley never left my side. She just kept grabbing at my hoof and bumping against me. It was embarrassing. It was unprofessional. It was the best thing ever. Author's note, it is good to have some Miley again. She's a real sweetheart and a lot of fun. If you are enjoying this story, please consider taking a look at Crystal and Mai's website quillenblade.com for extra content such as mini stories, an Ask Us form to submit questions, responses to said questions, and special rewards for the awesome folks who support our Patreon. End author's note.